Imagine for a moment the most advanced biological weapon ever created by humanity. A demigod crafted in genetic laboratories to be immune to fear, immune to disease, and capable of processing tactical data faster than a supercomputer. Now imagine taking that perfect mind, a masterpiece of genetic engineering, and voluntarily driving crude, rusted spikes into its most delicate sectors. This is not battlefield damage. This is not torture inflicted by an enemy. This is a choice, or rather, it is the illusion of a choice, masked by the desperate need of a son to be loved by a broken father. In the grim darkness of the far future, there are many ways to die, but there are very few fates that require you to mutilate your own soul while you are still breathing. We often look at the world eaters and see only mindless berserkers, monsters frothing at the mouth, screaming simply because they love the slaughter. But to view them only as savages is to miss the true horror of their existence. The horror is not that they are angry. The horror is that they are in pain. Constant, rewriting, agonizing pain that never sleeps. This is the tragedy of the Cruciamen, known to the uninitiated as the butcher's nails. It is a piece of archaeotech that does not just enhance aggression, it surgically removes the capacity for peace. It is a parasite made of cables and spite that rewires the brain to punish you for being human and reward you for becoming a monster. To understand the world eaters, you must first understand the device that destroyed them from the inside out. You must listen to the ticking. For a space marine of the 12th Legion, silence is not golden. Silence is agony. When the bolters stop firing and the chainswords stop revving, the nails begin their work. They drill into the meat of the mind with electrical impulses that feel like molten lead. The only way to stop the pain, the only way, is to inflict pain upon others. This is the horrifying reality of Angron's gene sons. They do not kill because they want to. They kill because it is the only time they are allowed to feel something other than torture.
To truly appreciate the depth of this mutilation, we must first look at what was lost. Before they were the World Eaters, before the red sands of New Syria stained their armor, they were the War Hounds, and they were glorious. The 12th Legion was not always a broken instrument of slaughter. In the early days of the Great Crusade, they were considered one of the most disciplined and effective infantry forces in the Imperium. They were the Emperor's leash-holding wolves, known for their intensely tight brotherhood and their unwavering phalanx formations. The War Hounds possessed a unique culture of empathy, strange as it sounds for transhuman warriors. While other legions might view their brothers as mere tactical assets, the War Hounds viewed their squad mates as literal extensions of themselves. When a War Hound died, his brothers would ritually consume part of his flesh, engaging the omophagia organ not just to gain tactical memories, but to keep the fallen brother's spirit alive within the unit. They were noble savages in the truest sense, brutal in war, yes, but bound by a code of honor and deep fraternal loyalty. They were the Shield brothers who would hold the line against impossible odds, not out of bloodlust, but out of a refusal to let their kin die alone. This capacity for brotherhood makes their eventual fate infinitely more tragic. The Butcher's nails did not just land on a blank slate, they infected a legion that felt emotions deeply. The tragedy of the War Hounds is that their greatest strength, their intense loyalty and desire for connection, was exactly what Angron would inadvertently exploit to lead them into damnation. They wanted a father. What they got was an executioner. Let us strip away the mythology and look at the Butcher's nails with the cold, clinical eye of a chirurgeon. What exactly are they? In the lore, they're described as archaeotech implants, originating from the technologically regressed world of Nuceria. But functionally, they are a neurological cancer. The device takes the form of thick, cabling spikes driven into the skull, often replacing large sections of the cranium and the brain matter itself. This is not a clean interface like the service studs of a tech marine. This is a crude, intrusive excavation of the self. The nails function by hijacking the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex, the areas of the brain responsible for emotional regulation, self-control, and the sensation of pleasure. Once implanted, the device fundamentally alters the neurochemical balance of the subject. It creates a feedback loop where the brain's natural production of serotonin and dopamine, the chemicals that make us feel calm or happy, is aggressively suppressed. In their place, the nails stimulate the production of adrenaline and aggression-fueling stimulants, but they do so with a cruel twist. Consider the medical concept of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, found in athletes who suffer repeated head trauma. We see mood swings, loss of impulse control, and eventual dementia. Now, imagine that process accelerated 1,000 times and weaponized. The nails induce a state of constant low-level electrical seizure in the brain's pleasure centers. When the subject is at rest, when they try to think, to plan, or to appreciate a moment of silence, the nails interpret this lack of aggression as a system error. They punish the host with debilitating migraines, phantom sounds, and a sensation often described as hot needles behind the eyes. This is the biting that the world eaters speak of. It is a physiological punishment for passivity. The only time the device relents, the only time it allows the brain to flood with endorphins and relief, is when the biomonitors register extreme spikes in adrenaline associated with violence. This is Pavlovian conditioning at its most horrific. The nails teach the space marine that peace is pain and slaughter is the only form of tranquility available to them. They are not addicted to killing in a moral sense. They are biologically addicted to the chemical relief that killing provides. The surgery itself is a nightmare of Tech-Heresy. We know from the records of the apothecary ghouls who first attempted to replicate Angron's implants that the success rate was abysmal. The nails do not just sit in the brain, they grow. They send tendrils into the gray matter, fusing with the nervous system until they cannot be removed without killing the host. The Emperor himself, upon examining Angron, admitted that even he, the master of mankind, could not remove the nails without extinguishing the Primarch's life. They had become the brain. The man was gone, only the machine remained, piloting the meat. To comprehend the curse of the World Eaters, we must look to the patient zero of this infection, Angron himself. There is a profound misunderstanding among casual observers that Angron was simply a brute, a monster born of the warp. But the truth is far more heartbreaking. Angron was the only Primarch who did not conquer his home world. He was the only Primarch who spent his formative years not as a king or a general or a leader of men, but as a slave. On the high-tech world of Nuceria, the ruling caste known as the Heim Riders forced the young Primarch into the gladiatorial fighting pits. It was here, in the hot dust and blood, that the butcher's nails were first hammered into his skull. This is the crucial distinction. Angron did not choose this. The nails were forced upon him to make him a more entertaining killer for the amusement of tyrants. He was mutilated against his will, his empathy lobotomized to ensure he would slaughter his own kind without hesitation. Consider the psychological weight of that violation. The Emperor created Angron to be the Primarch of brotherhood, a being capable of absorbing the pain of others an empath of the highest order. The nails destroyed that potential, twisting his gift into a curse. Every time he tried to bond with his fellow slaves, the machines in his head punished him. Yet, despite this, he led a rebellion. He became the Red Angel, a figure of hope for the downtrodden, standing ready to die with his gladiator family against the armies of the High Riders. And then came the betrayal, not by chaos, but by the Emperor. When the master of mankind arrived at Nuceria, he did not help Angron's slave army. He did not rain fire upon the slavers. Instead, he plucked Angron from the battlefield, teleporting him to safety while leaving his brothers and sisters to be massacred below. Angron watched from orbit as his family died, denied the honorable death he had promised them. He was saved, yes, but his soul was shattered. He was dragged into the stars to serve a new master, a new High Rider who commanded from a golden throne instead of a balcony. If you are finding value in this deep dive into the tragic psychology of the 40K universe, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel decode more grimdark mysteries for you. And if you enjoy the lore of the traitor legions, leave a like. It tells the algorithm that the chaotic truth must be spread. Angron hated the Imperium. He hated the Emperor. But most of all, he hated himself for surviving. He was a broken thing, a weapon that malfunctioned the moment it was deployed. When he took command of the 12th Legion, he did not see sons. He saw a mockery of the family he had lost. He killed his captains. He despised their discipline. He looked at their noble faces and saw only weakness. And this rejection broke the War Hounds' hearts. This brings us to the darkest turn in the Legion's history. The implantation of the Butcher's nails into the Legionnaires was not a mandate from the Emperor. It was not a tactical necessity. It was an act of desperate, twisted love. The War Hounds, rejected by their gene father, believed that the only reason Angron despised them was that they were whole while he was broken. They thought that if they could share his pain, they could share his strength. They wanted to understand him. Under the guidance of Khorne, who would later become the betrayer, but was then the voice of reason, the Legion's apothecaries reverse-engineered the nails from Angron's own implants. They called it the Cruciamen. It was a voluntary lobotomy. One by one, the captains and the line troopers laid down on the surgical tables. They allowed the tech priests to drill into their skulls and sever their connection to sanity. They did this not to become better killers, but to become closer to their father. Think about the sheer scale of this tragedy. Thousands of super soldiers, the pinnacle of human evolution, willingly mutilating their own brains in a futile attempt to gain the affection of a man who was incapable of feeling it. It is the ultimate abusive relationship, written on a galactic scale. The Brotherhood of Mutilation was born. They rewired themselves to match Angron's madness, believing that shared agony would forge a bond. But the nails did not bring them closer to Angron. They only brought them closer to the abyss. Angron did not love them for it. He barely noticed. Or perhaps, in his lucid moments, he pitied them for their stupidity. The Legion had sacrificed their souls for a nod of approval that never came. They had traded their discipline, their tactical brilliance, and their brotherhood for a lifetime of seizures and bloodlust. They had become the world eaters in truth, consumers of life, driven by a hunger they could never sate. As the Great Crusade pushed on and eventually bled into the Shadow Crusade, the consequences of the nails became undeniably horrific. The degradation of the 12th Legion was not instant. It was a slow, agonizing rot. On the battlefield, the intricate phalanxes of the War Hounds began to dissolve. Strategic planning was replaced by the Red Butchers, squads of Terminators so lost to the nails that they had to be chained in the holds of ships between battles. The biting became the only reality. We see accounts from the Shadow Crusade where World Eaters speak of the noise, the constant grinding static in their heads that drowned out orders, drowned out reason, drowned out the cries of the civilians they were butchering. Tactics became simple: get close enough to kill. The bolter was abandoned for the chain axe, not because it was more effective, but because the visceral feedback of tearing flesh was the only thing that spiked the dopamine levels high enough to silence the pain for a few seconds. The horror here is the loss of self. A World Eater might try to clean his armor, try to maintain his war gear, but the nails would punish him for the focus. He might try to remember the face of a brother who died on Terra, but the nails would burn the memory away with a migraine, demanding fresh blood instead. They became prisoners in their own bodies. The Cruciamen stripped away their humanity layer by layer until only the function remained: kill, maim, burn. It is crucial to understand that during the Shadow Crusade, alongside the Word-Bearers, the World Eaters were effectively being farmed by Lorgar. The Word-Bearers used the mass slaughter perpetrated by the 12th Legion to fuel their dark rituals. The World Eaters didn't care about the metaphysics of the warp. They just wanted the pain to stop. They were the fuel for the fire that would burn the galaxy, unaware that they were burning themselves up in the process. The tragedy reaches its peak when you realize that many of them knew it was wrong. In moments of clarity, veterans would look at their trembling hands, at the devastation they had wrought, and feel a flicker of the old War Hound honor. But then the nails would bite. The tick, tick, tick in the base of the skull would start. The red fog would descend, and the man would vanish, leaving only the butcher behind. One might assume that in a universe of magic and daemons, there would be a supernatural cure. One might think that by pledging their souls to Khorne, the god of war, the World Eaters would finally be free of the crude technological implants of New Syria. But this is the final, cruelest joke of the 40K universe. Chaos does not heal, it only exaggerates. When Angron was ascended to daemonhood during the Shadow Crusade, saved from the nails that were actively killing him, he did not find peace. He became a creature of pure red rage. The physical nails may have been absorbed into his demonic form, but their function remained. He is now an eternal engine of fury, incapable of stopping, incapable of dying, and incapable of the silence he once craved. He traded a mortal death for an immortal hell. For the Legionnaires, the fate is equally grim. As they dwell in the Eye of Terror, the warp has fused their armor to their flesh and the nails to their souls. The device is no longer just a machine, it is a spiritual shackle. Even if you were to cut the head off a World Eater today, the rage would likely continue in the warp. They are trapped in a Skinner box of cosmic proportions. The eternal engine refers to this self-sustaining cycle. To stop the pain, they must kill. To kill, they must serve Khorne. To serve Khorne is to be granted more strength to kill. There is no end state. There is no victory condition where a World Eater gets to retire and rest. The nails ensure that they are biologically and spiritually incapable of satisfaction. They are Tantalus in the underworld, forever reaching for a relief that recedes the moment they touch it. They are not the masters of war. They are its absolute, suffering slaves.
When we look at the World Eaters charging across the tabletop or screaming from the pages of a novel, it is easy to see them as one-dimensional villains. But if you look closer, if you look past the blood and the gore, you see the tragedy of the War Hounds.
You see a legion that destroyed itself out of love for a father who hated them. You see warriors who mutilated their own minds just to feel a connection that was never there. The butcher's nails are a reminder that in the grim darkness of the far future, the most terrifying weapons are not the ones that kill you. They are the ones that keep you alive, but strip away everything that makes life worth living. The World Eaters are not screaming solely out of anger. They are screaming because for 10,000 years, the buzzing in their heads has not stopped, not for a single second. And that is the true horror of the 12th Legion. They are not fighting to win. They are fighting to distract themselves from the noise.